All right. So, as we mentioned, uh, this parsha, or this opportunity has a lot for us to talk about. The parshas of the week, Parsha Vayeshev, a very important parsha. Then this Hanukkah, obviously a very important day, holiday on the calendar, and then Yud Tes Kislev, the Rosh Hashanah of Hasidism, and what that means. Let's see if we can bind them all together and do so with enough time for me to also finish my shopping. So, uh, so let's jump in. So this week is Parshat Vayeshev. It begins with a very puzzling kind of anecdote that brought down in the Medrash, cited by Rashi. Vayeshev Yaakov be'eretz megurei aviv is the way the parsha begins, which is why it's called Parshat Vayeshev. And Yaakov settled in the land of the sojourning of his father. Right? Vayeshev Yaakov be'eretz megurei aviv be'eretz Canaan. Finally, Yaakov has his his journeying has come to an end. He's back from Haran. He's finally settled in land Canaan. He faced off with Lavan. He's faced off with Esav, right? He's lost his beloved wife Rachel, but finally, he has come back to the land of Canaan, right? After all this, the trials and the tribulations and the difficulties, etc., here he is back home. And he finally gets settled down, right? Vayeshev Yaakov. Yaakov finally gets to settle down. But the Talmud, or the Midrash rather, notes this the juxtaposition, this subtle juxtaposition that the verse makes, the part that this pasuk makes. Vayeshev Yaakov be'eretz migure aviv, that Yaakov settles in the land of the sojournings of his father. Now, Yitzchak lived his entire life in the land of Canaan, right? He was never allowed to leave because he was the Ola Tamima, right? When he was brought up for the Akedah, even though he wasn't slaughtered, he was still brought as an offering to God. And as such, has had a certain standard of holiness that did not allow him to leave the borders of the Holy Land. So Yitzchak, even when there was a famine, and Avram, when there was a famine, went down to Egypt. Yitzchak didn't go down to Egypt; rather, he went to Gaza. By the way, which indicates that Gaza was part of it, Israel. There you go. He went to the land of the Pelishtim, to the land of Avimelech, right? But he was not allowed to go any further. He wasn't actually allowed to cross into Rafah, cross the border, all right, out of Israel. There's bringing
All
some
comes to
uh,
life.
geopolitics, right?
Yeah,
Geopolitics
but
into
all these places come to life, like the
right.
myths and all these
It's
things.
all real. It's all real, and it's all there till this
Yeah.
very day. But the bottom line is that Yitzchak lived his entire life. So if you can say that of any of the patriarchs that they settled in one place, it was Yitzchak, right? That he settled, the land of Canaan was his place, was the place where he settled. But the verse says that when Yaakov eventually gets back after truly kind of wandering, or not wandering, but definitely on a sojourn from the land of Haran back to the land of Canaan, that he finally comes back. Vayeshev Yaakov, that Yaakov settles in the land that his father settled. That's what it should have said. It doesn't say that. It doesn't say that he settled in the land that his father settled, but rather it says that he settled in the land that his father sojourned. And here is the thing: the verse says that Yaakov did something his father never did. His father spent his whole life in the land of Canaan, but his father didn't settle, didn't settle down. Rather, he was sojourning. And Yaakov wanted to settle. And the Medrash says that this is actually a mark against Yaakov. Birkesh Yaakov leishev b'shalva, that Yaakov wanted to settle down in peace. Amalei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God said to him, Lo dayach, is it not good enough for you that you have the world to come as your place to settle down and reap the rewards and benefits of your life's mission, that you want to do so during your lifetime as well? And it gets it again. The Medrash gets that, picks that cue up from the way that the verse says and juxtaposes that Yaakov was settled in a land that his father never did settle. His father was constantly on his journey, on his life mission, even as he never physically left the place and he never went on a physical journey, but he was always in that spiritual journey. But Yaakov sought to settle down while he was still alive, and God was wagging the finger at him. But not only was he wagging the finger at him and saying that theoretically what you're doing is wrong, it turns out that it actually costed Yaakov big time. Why? Because it says, because of that, that Yaakov was trying to settle down and kind of go into quote unquote retirement. Hafza alav rogzo shel Yosef. So the whole drama of Yosef that followed sprung upon him. Then that's how the Talmud explains why this is the opening line of the drama that immediately develops, right? Where Yosef comes with the dreams, the brothers get jealous, they eventually sell him downriver, and for the next 17, 22 years, Yaakov's life is an absolute mess, right? Where
Yeah.
he doesn't know Yosef, and he understands that his brother, his other sons had a hand in it, and he's unconsolable, etc. And the opening line of that whole drama is this line of that Yaakov will settle down in the land of the sojournings of his father. So the Talmud puts it all together and tells us that this was actually the ramifications of this negative move of Yaakov to try and settle down when it wasn't his time or place to do so, because his father, even though he spent his whole life in Canaan, never settled in the land of Canaan, as his father always and his grandfather Avram also constantly referred to himself as the Ivri, right, as the nomad. Avram didn't settle, Yitzchak didn't settle, Yaakov tried to settle, and because of that, he this whole drama of Yosef sprung upon him is the quote. Couple of questions, a lot of questions. First of all, was Yaakov really wrong in assuming or feeling or even asking that life should get a little calmer for him now? I mean, this is a man who, from the day he was born, never had a quiet, serene moment. Immediately
From
from the
from
moment
even
of birth, and
before he was born.
even before he was born, right? There was this what's it called, conflict
Right.
and struggle with his brother Esav, even in the womb, at the time of birth, at the moment of birth, literally they were struggling. He was holding on to Esav's ankle, Esav's heel, and then this carried on through their life, and then he eventually has to literally run for his life, and he runs to Haran, and he faces off with the most corrupt individual who for 20 years is trying to get the better of him. Can you imagine for 20 years in a constant state of struggle? And then finally he's on his way back, and then he has to face off with Esav again. It's like, so he comes back and he says, phew, I could really use a break. And he wants to settle down. And God says, don't you dare. I said, really? I can't? I can't take a breather? Number one.
Okay,
Uh,
but why? Like why is it a better, more enlightened status to be a wanderer?
uh, oh, good. So right. Why? So in other words, what's the big crime here?
Right.
Secondly, secondly, um, the God, for however severe this crime, let's say we do call it a crime severe enough to condemn him to mourning the loss of your son for decades.
Yeah.
That God punishes him with such a thing. This man served God, is continuing to serve God, and just wants to do it with a little bit of peace now. And God says, "How dare you?" And He then sends him the drama of Yosef. It's hard to understand, right? What the Talmud is saying. He's being punished with this, and more importantly, the drama of Yosef really doesn't have anything to do with a comeuppance for Yaakov. It has to happen, right? Yosef later says, right? What does Yosef later say to his brothers? I bear no ill will to you, because the truth is this was always meant to be. Right? I was always meant to come down to Egypt to become the viceroy so I could take care of you and begin the establish the next chapter, set the next chapter of the Jewish story on firm ground, etc. So this was always God's plan. So then, what does the Talmud mean when it says that this is, to a certain degree, a consequence of Yaakov's misguided desire to take it easy? Right? Again, a very confusing and interesting thing. And then lastly, how do we connect it to Yutes Kislev and to Chanukah?
Mm,
All right. So let's see if we can pull this off. Ready? So here we go. The answer is that the reason that it's wrong is not because Yaakov doesn't deserve it. Yaakov does deserve it. Isha Emes is a person of truth, right? Yaakov Isha Emes. And if Yaakov feels he deserves it, even like don't forget, there are most of the times he errs to the side of saying, I don't deserve, right? Even when he does. This is the one who, when he was heading out on the mission to Haran, was saying that he doesn't know if he deserves that God should protect him. On his way back from Haran, after spending 20 years in this most corrupt of places and still managing to keep all the Torah mitzvot, right? If you love on Garti, if it's Tayag mitzvot Shamarti, he still turns to God and says, Katonti mikol hachasadim mikol ha'emet, right? I have become humbled by everything you have done for me. And so I don't know if I stand and deserve that you should save me one more time from the hand of my brother, Miyad Achi, Miyad Esa. So this is an incredibly humble person who generally doesn't feel entitled or deserving of pretty much anything that he things that he does deserve, much less doesn't deserve. And if he feels that it's time and he deserves to settle down, then he's not wrong. So what is the crime here? And the crime is not that he doesn't deserve. The crime is, to a certain degree, that he has still so much more to offer.
mhm.
He has so much more to offer. And in this, he belittled himself and thinking to a certain degree that his role to play is up. He's
Because
raised
what,
his child,
Rabbi?
his role to play.
Right.
His role, he thinks, now my role is to establish the 12 tribes to build this up. And I returned to the land, and me returning to the land of Canaan means that now I step into the background.
Um,
And
the
I go from being an A-list actor to the B actors, you know?
Yeah.
And so to a certain degree, not so much that he was looking just to relax. Yaakov's not looking to relax. Yaakov understands, and importantly, that um, that we are each have every day that we have that God gives us, God expects us and wants us to do something with. And we shouldn't be kind of fundamentally lazy. We shouldn't be spiritually lazy, etc., etc. But what Yaakov assumed was that, to a certain degree, now he as the kind of the main driver of the legacy and direction of the Jewish people is done.
Yeah.
And
uh,
now,
uh, yo,
go ahead.
I I'm a little bit confused. Tell me if this statement is correct. Before the whole blessing Bechorah issue came up, what Yaakov was doing was being studying in his tent.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay. So then all of the rest of the story happens. And now he's at this point. And I thought what he was saying was, I want to go back to study, to be the scholar that I had hoped to be, and to understand Torah. What I can't understand is why that's a bad. What's wrong with that? It's not
Nothing
just
at
I
all.
want to relax. He wants much more than to relax. He believes that his mission, his purpose, is to learn Torah. This is a great mission.
Well,
It
apparently
is a
God
great
had a different idea of his mission.
no. It's a great mission, but importantly, like a situation. Do you know that there's halacha that says that if there's a mitzvah if you are the greatest Torah scholar in the world, You're studying profound Torah, but there's a mitzvah that you can do, that only you can do, and the only opportunity for you to do it is now. And if you don't do it now, the window of opportunity will be lost.
Yeah.
Then does Torah trump that mitzvah, or does mitzvah trump that the Torah learning? And the answer is that you have to put aside the Torah learning and do the mitzvah. And then obviously get back to the Torah learning. But and without a doubt. But in other words, this is kind of what I'm saying. He felt in a sense that the role that he played where only he uniquely can achieve something has been done. Now he's able to truly, as you said, Paula, focus only on Torah and not be worried about the great, he's done his role, he already fulfilled his part in establishing the momentum. And he says, okay, now I get to go back and just study Torah. Just study Torah.
Yeah.
And God says, no, you're still on the clock.
Yeah.
You're still on the clock. And why we're going to say this is something important, because this is the Torah tells us this because to a certain degree we have to constantly be asking ourselves the same thing. The same thing. What does the world need that I am uniquely able to give? And when do we stop asking ourselves that question?
Never.
And that's the answer. Never.
What is that quote from, I think it's Mark Twain? The two most important dates are the day I was born and the day I find out why.
Very interesting. Yeah, that's a good one. And to a certain degree, importantly, it's that and the answer to that question doesn't end at any point.
Right. Right.
And this is what the Bikesh Yaakov Vayeshev, to your point, and perhaps the key word, Paula, is shalva. Right? Bikesh Yaakov Vayeshev is shalva. And God says shalva means serenity, peace, whatever it is, as if there isn't a concern left. And God says you still have to be concerned. Concerned. The world's direction is still your concern. Right? Now, Paula, doesn't mean that the majority of it they can't go to Torah. Maybe it is all about Torah, but maybe it's about teach Torah to your children, whatever it is. Now, here's what's fascinating. Look at the exact lines. It never says, the Talmud never says, because of it, God caused the drama to happen to Yaakov. Rather, it says because of this, because of his desire to kind of to settle in serenity. Allah Ragzo Shel Yosef. The drama of Yosef sprung upon him. What does that mean? That the drama of Yosef was always going to happen. God forbid we should ever think that the whole drama of Yosef only happened as a punishment to Yaakov for this perceived crime. No, it was always going to happen. The problem in this was, and in a sense, the negative consequence is that it sprung upon Yaakov. When does something spring on somebody?
When you don't know about it beforehand.
Unexpected.
When you don't see it coming.
Right.
Right? And this is the point. Yaakov was not as vigilant as he could/should have been. And therefore, this came out of nowhere. It came out of left field. And that's the sense of guilt that Yaakov carries with him until he finds out that not only is Yosef alive, but Yosef is still holding true to the standard because he felt that he did not properly prepare Yosef enough because he, to a certain degree, didn't see his role as much anymore.
Yes. Yes.
And therefore felt that maybe because of that he didn't prepare Yosef as well as he should have.
For what?
Because it came for his next phase. Then Yosef, as he will in hindsight, Yosef says, this was always part of the plan. This was my role to play. This is your Yehuda. This was your role to play. This was all our roles to play. And Yaakov also sees this, but he feels that he did not properly prepare them. This whole thing sprung upon him because he did not stay vigilant enough because he felt that his role in this thing, this central role he played, is over.
Right, but
So
he thought Joseph was dead. So what was he
no,
supposed to do?
no. Leading up to this, he
Be-
thought that he was. Why did
right.
he carry a personal guilt with what
Uh-huh.
He
happened to
should
Yosef?
have. He should
Because
have.
he felt that that Yosef was not properly prepared for this, and whose fault was that? He was taking it
It
upon
was
himself.
Yaakov's.
He felt that had he stayed focused and still properly understood that he's on the clock, that he still has a role to play here in preparing, not only in establishing his household, but teaching his household, getting them prepared, etc., then
And
Well,
being
wait,
a
Yosef
wait,
would have
good
wait.
been
parent.
better.
Are you
Yosef would
saying
have been
that he was spoiling Joseph
no,
and
not
then
spoiling,
No.
not spoiling, but not investing enough, not
In
feeling
his
that he still
children.
had enough of a role to play in preparing his children for the next stage.
That's it. That's it.
Maybe
That's it.
and maybe he was learning with them, but he wasn't really. In other words, he didn't. He felt, and by the way, it turns out he was incorrect. Right in the end, Yosef was. He had given Yosef enough, right?
right?
But he was
Yes.
concerned because it felt like it came out of left field, like he wasn't prepared enough for the whole drama to play out, because that he perhaps didn't then prepare Yosef enough for it. In the end, Baruch Hashem, Yosef was, and Yosef rose to the occasion. And when Yaakov not only saw that Yosef was alive, right? It says that they came to tell him that Yosef was alive, and still yet he didn't accept it, and he didn't get calm. This is next parsha. But when he saw the agalot, right? When he saw the chariots that Yosef had sent being led by, it says agalot. Agalot are like baby goats, right? The egel, the baby goats, right? From the word agal, egel, like the egel, not baby goats, baby calves, right? Not something usually tied to the to pull wagons. Why did Yosef specifically send agalot? Because the last thing that him and his father had learned were the halachot of the laws of Egla Arufa, and he was sending his father a kind of this message. He says, "I'm still your son who maintains all the learning and everything that you taught me." Then
And he dressed
Vatihi,
up in goat skin.
but it
He
wasn't
dressed.
goat. It was no. That it says, and that's why I said I had to correct myself. It's not goat. Not goat. Egel is a set is a goat. This was or izim are goats. This was an egel. This is a baby calf agalot. But they were learning about the egla arufa. Basically, he was showing his father, "Don't worry, I have not forgotten anything of what you taught me. I'm still that son." I'm still that son. And when he saw that, that's when it says, "Vatichi ruach Yaakov avim," that the spirit of Yaakov was revived in him. I have not failed my son. He's still holding true to what it is. I thought this whole time that I had lost him, either physically or spiritually, that I did not properly set him up for his role in this mission because I checked out mentally from my role in the mission too early and therefore was not there to properly, really robustly take my role in preparing the next generation. I came into the land of Canaan and thought, okay, that's it. Now I take a step back, and everybody else takes a step forward, and I'm in the background. I faded into the background of this. And so when it turns out that he still had a significant role to play in preparing Yosef for his drama, it sprung upon him. He didn't see it coming as much because he wasn't being vigilant to the cues of what his role is and how he's supposed to play it, etc., as much as he should have been had he never gotten out of that mental headspace that he's still on the clock, as it were. And so that's what he felt guilty about for all those years. It wasn't that the drama of Yosef was a consequence of his, but the springing of it upon him was a consequence not of punishment, but because he wasn't being vigilant enough. And why wasn't he being vigilant? Because he felt, I'm done. My role is done. Not simply because he just wanted to take it easy and to take a break, but because he saw, okay, now I played my central role for as long as it was necessary. But now it's the next generation. The next generation have grown up, and God is saying, as long as you're on this mortal coil, there's a role you play that only you can uniquely play, and you need to keep on asking yourself that question. You can never settle into serenity until Olam Haba. Then you'll have your serenity. But if you're here,
It
Hayom
sounds very
Lasot,
Chabad.
Not surprising that this is obviously a talk of the Rebbe on this. But now let's connect this to Yutes Kislev and Hanukkah. Basically, another way of saying this is not chronological, but sometimes it's also just, you can say that this is a lesson of chronology, that if you are here today, you have a mission today, right? And you have no excuse to not look at the mission today. There's another approach to this, which is circumstantial, which is sometimes you think that this has been taken out of my hands, and therefore there's no role for me to play, or I have an excuse. It's not again that I have now arrived at an age or a time in my life where I don't have a role to play, but the circumstances, I don't have a role, I can't play a role, or I can't achieve what I want to achieve because the circumstances are not conducive or not or don't allow for it. And for a Jewish person, that never factors. What do I mean with that? That's the Hanukkah story. You ever ask yourself, so many miracles happen to the Jewish people in the course of history. What in the world are we doing celebrating that oil lasted 7 days beyond its expiration date? There was greater miracles in terms of caliber of miracles that occurred in the temple on a daily basis. A fire descended from heaven every single day to consume the offerings. A column of fire came out of heaven to consume that, I think, is a more remarkable thing. If you want to think which one of these would get a big old, in terms of special effects, right? Which would get a bigger wow factor? Oil burning for longer than expected, or a fire descending out of heaven to consume offerings? Pillars of clouds, pillars of smoke, the things that occurred, again, that we hear, splitting of the seas and things like that. And yet, this becomes a calendrial event for forever. Oil was supposed to last for 1 day, and it lasted for 8 days.
Well, look at
Why
the
do we make such a
circumstance.
major holiday out of this?
If you look at the circumstance, it makes sense. If
Why?
you say, okay, go ahead.
No, no, no. I would like to clarify.
Okay, what I was thinking was this is not just figurative or not just literally, but figuratively, the darkest time in our history up until that moment. And here is this miracle. It at that time there could not have been anything more extraordinary.
I good, and you are 100% right, and I'm going to articulate further, but let me flesh it out with you a little bit more and ask you that why this miracle? Why is this the way to do it? Okay, so let's first back up. Okay, just because we're running low on time, let's get straight to the point that actually Paula is mentioning. We have to remember the context in which this miracle occurs. This miracle occurs at a time where the Jewish people are not exactly, but pretty similar to what's going on right now. Even though they existed in Israel, and even though there was already a temple standing, the Jewish people were very much not under their own dominion. They definitely did not feel the hand of God in their daily lives. They even the building of the second temple had been under the aegis and under the authority of the Persian Empire, right, which had taken over of the Babylonian Empire, the same empire that had destroyed the temple and exiled the Jewish people. So you have the Babylonians, and not a moment reprieve, the Jewish people were then under the Persians, and not a moment reprieve, and then they were under the Greeks. And under the Greeks, they were banned from doing Torah mitzvahs, but not all of Torah mitzvahs. The cultural Torah mitzvahs, by all means. They were able to do the vast majority of the mitzvot, and they were able to study Torah. Not only that, but the Greeks actually encouraged them because the Greeks appreciated the wisdom and the brilliance and the insightfulness and justice and fairness of the Torah, and they were very, very into it. Right? The Greeks were very, very philosophical and very transcendental in their knowledge and etc. of things. They just didn't like the stuff that made no sense, the stuff that we only do because God. Lashkicham Toratecha Ulavira michuke ritzonecha, as we say in the Al Hanisim. They wanted us to forget that it's God's Torah, and they wanted to do away with the chukim, which category of mitzvot are the chukim? The
the ones that
category of
don't
the
have a
mitzvot that
logical.
don't make any sense. And so
Right.
the challenge to the Jewish people was something that we are very familiar with, which is that the Greeks were saying, "Join us in our culture."
Right. Ours makes sense. We're
and
logical.
even and even keep the stuff of your Torah that is laudable, and
Right.
adhere to the stuff in Judaism that is meaningful and fulfilling and it conforms with the zeitgeist, etc., etc. But you know that weird stuff in Judaism, don't do that. Come on,
Right.
get with the times, get with the program, become modern,
Right.
right? And the vast majority of the Jewish people did what? Just that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that they weren't proudly Jews. They didn't become Greeks, but they became Hellenistic Jews.
Right.
The Mityavnim, right? It doesn't mean that they became Yevanim. They became Mityavnim. They became modern Jews. They became Hellenistic Jews.
Hmm. Hellenized.
They Hellenized. And the temple still stood, but it all became a temple to serve ideals of the Greeks.
Yeah.
Because they
And
were
God
living
hadn't
in the
been
world and of the
manifest.
world.
What?
Because they were living in the world and of the world. That they
Correct.
were trying for
And they're
both.
right. And they were trying as hard as possible to be of the world.
Yeah.
And and in this comes one radical named Matityo. It says unacceptable.
Hmm.
And he gathered a group of farm people and he went up against the American army. Right? Literally, at that point, the Greek army with its war elephants and whatever it is was like a group of farmhands trying to go up against the American army. And for what? To maintain the culture? All the Hellenistic Jews said, we have our culture. We actually upgraded the culture. We have modernized the Jewish culture. We have had to conform with the zeitgeist. And look, they even respect a lot of the things of Judaism and Torah. And they say, so we got rid of the God of it. So what? So we still can give sermons and talk about the nice ideas that this Torah brings to society and how
Right. The
meaningful it is.
community. The
I'm
community.
not right, Jerry. I'm walking the thin line. Don't push me over because then right, we're trying to walk this line without saying yeah dot 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 right.
Yes.
But comes the radical Matityahu, and he says unacceptable. And here's the thing: he could have said, "Oh, it's out of my hands. It's the circumstance is just beyond.
Yeah.
I could sit b'shalva." And I can study my Torah with a few of us left who will do it and just lament the circumstance, but say, look, we're supposed to go up against the whole Greek army when even the majority of my own people are not with me.
Yeah.
Right? What do you really want? I'll create my little enclave in Modi'in. He could have lived his life in peace. No, he raised his sword, Mila Hashem Ilai. And all along the way, there are excuses to say no and not push it. Because interestingly enough, the main thing we celebrate is not the victory of the war. Again, when we make the Asha Asanisim blessing, we say that over the menorah of 8 branches, it's not over the war. There are those that say that the first day of Hanukkah is actually to celebrate the miracle of the victory of the war, because the truth is only 7 days of oil are miraculous. The first day was supposed to work for one day. So many people say that the first day of Hanukkah, what you're doing is celebrating the victory of the war, Chanukah Chafei, that they rested on the 25th. So the first day of Hanukkah is celebrating the victory of the war. But even if still, first of all, the Talmud, when it discusses Hanukkah, doesn't mention that. But even if still, the other 7 days, the vast majority of Hanukkah is about the oil, not about the war. So why is the oil such a big deal? And the answer is because we all know the story, one jug of pure olive oil, right? Because they couldn't use impure oil. The seal was broken of the Kohen Gadol. They couldn't use that in the menorah. Here's the little secret. Yes, they could have. They absolutely could have used, halachically, they could have used impure oil. You know that?
No.
Tuma putra betzibur. Here's a rule, a halachic rule that says if the whole congregation is in a state of impurity, then that affects the standards of the temple that they can use. You can use impure oil at that point.
Why was the whole
They could have,
congregation in a state of impurity?
because none of them had been able to bring offerings in the temple for all the time that the Greeks were occupying it. They
Uh,
couldn't bring the paraduma, etc., etc. All the people were in a state of impurity, which means that they had plenty of usable oil to halachically light the menorah in the temple.
hmm,
Which means what should have happened after they found miraculously that first jug of oil that lasted one day? What should they have then done? Halachically, use the rest of the oil. They
yeah.
had plenty of oil, plenty of halachically usable oil. But comes Judah Maccabee and he turns to he says, "What did we just fight for, guys? We fought for Yiddishkeit without any excuses. We were doing the compromised Judaism for this whole time. And we could have said, what do you want us to do, God? It's risk our lives for mitzvot that are not necessarily, we're not being threatened. Doesn't, for example, keeping Shabbat, it said, right? One of the mitzvot that that Antiochus didn't allow is keeping Shabbat. Do you know that you're not allowed to put your life in danger to keep Shabbat?
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but we did because we made a blanket decision that no excuses, with no compromise. Self-sacrifice because God, the relationship with you is the most important thing. We're not looking for excuses. We're not looking to get away with it. That's what we went to battle for. That's what we put on the line. We're now going to use oil that we can get away with using. The whole battle was for the
Oh,
purity of the whole battle was for the purity of Yiddishkeit. So we're going to, in our first opportunity, we're going to use impure oil. The whole battle was to not compromise. And so the first opportunity afterwards, we're going to start compromising.
Yeah.
oh.
Now, here's what's remarkable. Here's what's remarkable. There's a general rule that God does not do a nes larik, that God does not do unnecessary miracles. Not because it takes any more effort than not doing miracles, but because God Himself is one who established the laws of nature, and the being most loath to break the laws of nature are God Himself. Is God Himself. So God only does something supernatural if there is an absolute must. So
Hmm.
when we lit the menorah with pure oil and then ran out after one day, there was no must for the miracle. Okay, days 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, you'll just use the impure oil. Halachically, it's totally fine. There's no must, there's no necessity for the miracle, except that there was. And that's the story. When the Jewish people rose to this moment to show that the relationship to God with God meant so much to them that they were willing to sacrifice everything, to not compromise even one iota, then God says, I'll meet you there. I will meet you there. And this miracle will become an absolute must.
Wow.
And that's Hanukkah. Hanukkah was a moment where it was clear to everybody the unique relationship that God has with the Jewish people, a relationship without any excuses, a relationship where everything is about it. I put everything on the table, whether I have an excuse to get away with it, and that's all the time. What is the most meaningful things? We said, what are the grandest gestures that somebody can do for somebody to show the depth of the relationship? Is when we do something that we have every reason and excuse not to. But of course, that doesn't even enter our mind. Sure, I could have gotten away with not doing it. Sure, it was not expected of me, but that's the whole point, right? That's
Yeah.
the whole point. That right there defines the relationship. Could I have gotten away with it? Could I have done something else? Could I have had an excuse all lined up and ready to go? Yes, but this whole thing was not, it was that there are no excuses. I'm not looking for the excuse. I'm not looking to do with what I can get away with doing. I am doing 110%, and that's by me the baseline. And to a certain degree, this is what Yaakov had to remember. Sure, you've earned your ability to take a step back, but why? Why are you? What happened to that 110%? Sure, Matityahu and Judah Maccabee many times over could have said, this is really not expected of us. Is it really expected of us? It's not really expected of us. Of course, it's not expected of you, but that's the point. It's not about whether it's expected or not. It's 110%. That's Hasidus. There's a difference between being from, being as observant as possible, and being a Chassid. A Chassid is Chesed. Why is somebody called a Chassid? Because they do kindness with their Creator. What does it mean to do kindness with their Creator? Does God really is in need of your kindness? But kindness means to go beyond what I must do, to do something I really want to do. Nobody asks of you to give 110%. You could be asked to give 100%. 110% is that you feel and you are motivated to give more than is being asked of you.
This is why you guys go wild for Pesach.
but this is the point. Everybody, Chassidus as a study is just the philosophy of this, but all of us are this in our relationship with God. It's not
But
about what I have to do.
Matityahu's standards were very high.
Because his standards, for him, the standard was beyond the standard.
Yeah.
For us, it's not about what is the most I am expected to do. It's about what is the most that I can possibly do.
Today, for the first time, I kind of really understand the difference between a modern Orthodox and a Chabad. I really see
Right. Again, I don't want to go
I
into
know,
like
I know you don't want to go there,
label
but I'm allowed to
label
say it.
differentiation. But
I'm
just to
allowed to
simply
say it.
put,
Or the
I hear you,
Hebrews. Yeah.
but think about it. To be from, quote unquote, means to
Yeah.
do exactly what is expected of you without deviation, right?
Right. Right.
To be a Hasid is to go beyond the letter. Milta de Pirkei Avot is called Milta de Chasiduta or Milsa de Chasidusa, which means there's no laws in Pirkei Avot. This was again before the term Chasidu, way before the 1,000 years before the Baal Shem Tov ever came around. But to a certain degree, what the Baal Shem Tov was saying is, I'm going to model what it means to create a lifestyle around Milsa da Chasidusa. So one who does this is committing to be that chassid, a chassid that is not a partisan political position within Judaism. To be a chassid means to say my relationship with God is beyond what I must,
Yeah.
or beyond what I can give myself an excuse to do or get away with. It's how do I give my all?
How do I give
How do
my
I,
all? But you have to start with that base
Right. The law. Right.
of the
Without a
law. All
doubt,
right, of
of
mitzvot.
course,
Mm.
of
Okay.
course, of course. And if you don't
So
start there, you
I
don't
think
get
for
to
some of us, for a
110%
lot
by
of us, we're still getting to that first step to be able to go
nope,
beyond it.
nope,
No,
nope, because it's
it's
not an either or.
simultaneous.
It's not
Uh,
correct. It's not an either or proposition. It's not you first get there and only then can you start adding to it. You can
uh,
have that zeal and passion and commitment. Who are the Baal Shem Tov's first Hasidim? Those who sinned plenty, but they didn't do it knowingly or they didn't do it calmly. They didn't do these were the simple Jews who again probably couldn't daven, definitely weren't necessarily davening 3 times a day with all the proper, but their hearts were totally given over to God. And they were
it's very
thirsting to
hard
do
for me to see.
what?
That's so difficult for me to internalize.
That what?
I feel like this journey of mine has to start with the understanding before being able to go beyond the understanding. And you're saying no, they're simultaneous, but it's I need help with that, I guess.
Put it this way, Paula. Paula,
Na'aseh v'nishma.
why are you so committed to understanding? What's the sentiment behind it? It's not quantitatively, it's qualitative. The difference between these two approaches is not quantitative, it's qualitative. It's not when we say 100 to 110%, we're not talking about percentages. What we're talking about is what is the motivation? What type of relationship are you creating with God?
So
One, we are
go
trying to
ahead.
properly execute on a checklist and make sure you're not leaving anything out of the checklist. Or one is that I am trying to truly develop a deep devotional connection to God, where as I learn more and more, will do my utmost to show God that I am His man or
It's
His
a
woman.
different way of looking at it. For me, if I believe if the bottom line is this is something worth preserving, halacha, Judaism, Torah, mitzvot, Talmud, these are things worth preserving. Am I going to preserve it best by doing what I can to get by and then making sure that playing it forward, moving it forward with chesed, or
No, but I'm going to stop you before you get it. You already then, but that first point, I'm doing because it's something worth preserving. Is that really the only motivation in Judaism? Is to make sure that this is a well preserved specimen, or is it significantly more than that?
you know, it, in order to live it, it has to be preserved. So,
Uh,
uh,
no, but that ultimately means that the main
not
motivator is not
preserved
to
as a
preserve it.
fossil.
Ah, but my point is why? But why do you want to live it? That's the thing. A chassid probes him or herself on this point. What is the kernel of my motivation? Am I doing this to earn a portion in the world to come? At which point it is really, as long as I have an excuse, as long as I can make a good argument when I get into heaven that I couldn't do this because of this, and that, and that. Okay, so hopefully we're not just motivated by that self-interest of making sure that I've got a
Right,
nice portion of the world to come. But then you have to
right.
ask yourself, why what is motivating me? That's the key to this. The key to understanding of what drove the Maccabees, what Yaakovino had but perhaps slightly forgot and had to get back and had to remind himself about, etc. What we motivate, what is the lesson to each and every one of us is, why are we invested in this? Why are we so concerned? Why are we not going to sleep at night peaceful when I've put in a decent day's work of my Judaism, et cetera, where nobody can fault me for the amount I put in, et cetera? Why am I still going because the point of the matter is, this is everything to me. This is everything to me. It's the purpose of my existence. It's why I live, what I want to live for. It's what I want to teach those around me to live for, etc. It's not just something that I am doing. It's not even just something that I'm feeling. It's what I am. And as long as the breath of life is in my nostrils, it has my full devotion. Now, again, doesn't mean, Paul, it doesn't mean that I approach this and I just jump off the in a chaotic fashion. No, by all means, methodical, step by step. But what's the motivation? What's the spirit behind this all? What is my commitment to Judaism? Is my commitment to Judaism just the same commitment that I have to any truth out there? Is it something? Is it a passion? Is it a hobby? Is it what is my relationship
It's not
to God?
commitment to a truth, it's commitment to the truth.
But it's more than just a commitment to truth.
Can I make a suggestion?
Please.
I always think of the word mitzvah as with the same root as tafta, which means connection. So we are striving beyond the mitzvot to make a connection, a constant connection with God.
But why? That's my point.
Well,
Why?
that's almost a
We're
mitzvah.
still talking
That's
about
almost a
strategies.
mitzvah to do that. In other words,
But
you've got the law that you have to.
right. No, but I'm asking you, why do you want to make a connection with God? What is motive? Because it'll be good for you in the end if you do so. You'll get a nice slice of the world to come. At
I
that point,
always
I'm
say
making much.
schal mitzvah, mitzvah,
No, but why? Why?
because you just
Let's
want
get to
to.
the nub of it. What's motivating you? Why are you driven for this? What drives you?
Schal mitzvah, mitzvah. It's
But
just,
why?
No,
Why?
what
Not
drives me is
why
the
you do a
perfection
mitzvah.
of
Why
it.
do you want to have a connection with God?
how could you not want that? But
Because
really,
I'd rather make a connection with a good burger and some pickles and fries.
a
No, I'm serious.
cheeseburger.
Not even a cheeseburger. In other words, what is the relationship? I have a relationship. I want to make a connection with my mailman. Why? Because I need to have my mail. I want to make a connection with people in the shul because I enjoy their company. I
Right, but
want to
if I'm
make a
doing mitzvot,
no,
why
but
am
you're
I doing
still
the
talking
mitzvot?
about the how. I'm talking about the why. How you have a connection, that's a mitzvah. And a mitzvah leads to another mitzvah. That's the how. Why? Hanukkah is about the why. The Judah Maccabee and Matityahu, etc., it said, there is nothing that is more important. There's no excuse that is valid, etc. There is nothing that drives us more than having this relationship with God. They were in love with God, and God was in love with them. They were in love with God. A chassid is in love with God. And again, not chassid with the capital C, the sect. Every Jew has this. Chassidus is to make this real to you, to uncover that truth, and to cultivate your whole attitude, your zeal, and your desire to do the mitzvahs, and your desire to learn Torah. Torah, because I get to know God better. I get to know this being I'm in love with. The more I learn Torah, the more I get to know them and understand them. The more I do mitzvahs, the more I connect with them, because I'm in love with God.
Okay, so I think I made the point with tafta. That's what you
But I'm
wanted.
saying that's I get the nub to the nub of the matter. Hanukkah, more than many other holidays, everything that motivated them was not because they had to, not because it was expected. It wasn't expected, and they didn't have to, but they did it without compromise because they are in love with God. And God didn't have to make the miracle back. But why did he do it? Because he's in love with us.
Hmm.
Hanukkah, we're celebrating the love affair between
Yes,
God and the people and people and God.
yeah.
And that is a remarkable thing. And that has the power to shine up the light in the darkness. No matter how strong the dark is, etc., because there's no excuses, there's no compromise. It's I am motivated from the depth of who I am because I'm in love with God. And once there's love, once it's about love, it's not about excuses. It's not about whether I can get away with it. In a relationship that you're truly, truly in love with somebody, you're not looking for the excuses to do a minimum effort or even a moderate effort. It brings you the greatest joy and the greatest sense of fulfillment when you do the maximum effort. You go 110%. You do crazy things when you're in love. You do things beyond logic and beyond rationale. Now, of course, you do the rational things. You can't just get them the crazy gift, but not put food on the table and not be there for the. Obviously, if it's love, you also take care of the fundamentals. But the litmus test is there beyond the fundamentals, or is it the fundamentals? Is there the point where excuses are irrelevant, or a good valid excuse and good valid argument is the threat is in a sense the boundary. I will go up until the point where it doesn't make sense to go further. When it comes to love, there is no such thing. I go as far as I can go.
Uh, that's very beautiful. That's Rabbi, if I've already if I've already been blessed to be able to be in love with a human being, thank God I am.
Right.
That's not the relationship I want with God. What my husband can't give me is the perfection that Hashem provides. That's not
No,
about being in love. That's a whole different realm of
love.
emotion and
It's a whole different realm of love. In the same way that the love you have to your spouse is different than the love you have to a child. And even though they are all profound and all encompassing, and your child, the way you have a love to a child is very different. It's more you being up there, the child being down there. The love you have with a spouse is more like being like this. The love that you have for a parent is more that you're here and they're there. And the love you have with God is it doesn't mean it's not love. It just means it's a profoundly different love. It's without a doubt.
all right. Now we're getting together. Okay, fine.
But what it is, it's the relationship's not transactional. As too many religions, including many in Judaism, teach of transactional relationship with God. Do this, you earn heaven, right? Or he's the big boss, and Hanukkah puts the lie to that whole thing, to that whole approach. Hanukkah says if it was all about that, if it was transactional, none of this would have happened. Matityahu would not have raised his sword. They would have used, even if he did, they would have used impure oil, and no miracle would have occurred because nothing made sense in that sequence of events. Nothing was necessary in that sequence of events. It was all because both sides were in a love affair with each other. And that's what we celebrate on Hanukkah. We
So
celebrate the
I guess my problem was
110%,
semantics. Fair
which
enough.
is why, yeah, which is why Hanukkah is not a 7-day holiday. Which is the fulcrum of what naturally is. It's an 8-day holiday
Right.
because it's beyond. That's the point. Hanukkah is about that 110%, that extra mile, that thing that pushes you beyond what makes sense and to do something that is totally incomprehensible and unexplainable. And it's love. It's love. Now, of course, what kind of level of love? A level that only you can only have for God, and a love that God can only have for you. And it's not akin to other types of love, as each love is not akin to each other. But what is it? It's more. It's more than just a transactional relationship. It goes far deeper. That's what Hasidus tries to teach you to cultivate, not create within you. You have it already, but Hasidus tries to help you develop it, realize that you have it, enhance it, bring it into greater focus and clarity. That's the entire Hasidus. That's all Hasidus is. That's what the Alter Rebbe created a textbook for it on your on in the Tanya. That's what Tanya is. It's the textbook of this. So that's Yotes Kislev, that's Hanukkah, and that's the message from the Parsha. Yaakov had every reason to be able to say, okay, I'm done. I'm done. But God said, you're a tzaddik. There is no done.
Done?
Right? You're a
There's no
chassid.
done.
Right? And that's the point. So on that note, good Shabbos, good Yontif,
Shabbos.
happy
Good
Hanukkah.
Rabbi,
Shabbos. Chanukah Sameach.
two
Beganza
things.
Megillah.
It's a beautiful, beautiful class. Thank you, Rabbi.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Rabbi.
110%, everybody. All of us, not again, not
Thank you.
quantitatively, but qualitatively. Let's discover that within us. Let's light the Hanukkah candles and see that flame of the menorah, that's us. That's our neshama.
Beautiful.
Constantly burning, constantly striving to climb higher and higher and higher. The flame is never satisfied. There's never a point where the flame says, "I'm high enough. I'm not going to try to go higher." The flame is always going to want to go higher. That's the way we are with God. I always want to do more. I'm not looking for the excuse to say I'm done. I always want more. I want more, God. Because that's love. That's what love is. All right, everybody?
Thank
Be
you.
well.
Rabbi, two
Thank-
quick things. I
Sure.
sent you an email. I don't know. I hope you got it yesterday. And also about the handshaking. Years ago, I was probably about your age, and I didn't know anything about not shaking hands. And I was in a I was speaking with a group of people. One was a chassid, a rabbi. And of course, I went up to him and offered my hand to shake his hand. And he said, "You'll forgive me if I don't shake your hand." And I thought that was lovely. Have you ever heard that before?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, but it sort of assumes that they understand. You'll forgive me. What about
Right,
forgive
no.
me?
Right.
Right,
It
right.
wasn't, I guess he could look in my eyes and see that I would forgive him. And of
Yes.
course I did.
Yes. Well, Sudi, he looked into your eyes and saw he's talking to a classy individual, and knew that.
Oh,
Absolutely.
thank
And
you. Thank you. And
yes,
Shabbat
Sudi,
Shalom, everybody.
Shabbat Shalom. I don't see the email, so I don't know if you want to
Oh,
try to
you
resend it.
don't?
No,
Tell
if
me
I could
the
ask you to,
address again.
so you can send it to our website is shalomchabad.com, and the email is rabbi@shalomchabad.com.
rabbi@shalomchabad.com. Okay, I'll try that
Here's
again.
what I could do. If you want, I could send you an email right now to which you can
Oh,
respond.
good.
That helps.
Rabbi, can I
Great.
call you for 2 minutes, like right now?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to. Thanks.
All right.
Bye,
I'm not
everybody.
Bye
Bye.
bye, everyone.
Shabbat
Feel better,
Shalom.
everybody.
Hope
everybody.
you
Bye-bye.
feel better, Diane.
Thank you.
Yes, and Jerry. By the way, the
And
learning today was
Jerry.
done in merit of speedy recovery for Akiva Amiel ben Bracha, Sapir bat Yehudit, and Rafael ben Esther. All need to hear good news.
Soon in
All
another
right.
day.
Bye-bye. See you on.
Amen.
Amen. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat shalom.